Excellencies, good afternoon. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll start last session of today's conference, focus on the forecast in the region with very special focus on Egypt. We'd like to welcome, to start our session welcoming His Excellency Engineer Tariq Al-Mullah, the Egyptian Minister of Petroleum and Mineral Resources. His Excellency has just landed to Beirut after a long flight because he was very keen to be with us today in the conference. Thank you so much, Excellency. His Excellency was appointed as a minister since 2015, and he has got several international recognitions and awards. One of them was from the French president due to his outstanding efforts in the era of oil and gas at the region and internationally. Please welcome His Excellency, Engineer Tariq Al-Mullah, to deliver his speech.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Your Excellency, President Amin Al-Jumail, Sheikh Amin Al-Jumail, Excellencies, distinguished guests, I'm really honored, and it is of my pleasure to be here. And I'm sorry for being late today, but being late better than never. So it's such an honor, as I say, to be among this distinguished gathering of participants for this prestigious and important event. We gather here today to shed light on Egypt's success story in the oil and gas field, and to further explore how we can use this success to expand and pursue greater regional cooperation, especially in the gas domain. Egypt's vision for change is being driven at an unprecedented pace by a roadmap that has its oil and gas sector at the heart of its transformation. The past 4 years have witnessed boundless progression for Egypt, with 2018 bringing to life an unwavering dedication and driving force to deliver further oil and gas exploration, growth, with numerous finds, with investments worth $25 billion. In addition to the efficient development of gas fields, which resulted in a 50% increase in natural gas production compared to the 2016 average of 3.8 billion cubic feet per day, we'll reach 100% of these quantities by year 2020. International oil companies' arrears decreased by more than 80% between 2012 and 2018. By digging deeper and aiming higher, Egypt has undergone an extraordinary journey, switching from being a gas importer to being self-sufficient, enabling more than 9 million households to become connected to the national grid, targeting 10 million by the end of this year. Simultaneously, oil and gas infrastructure modernization and construction continues to advance. Moreover, massive steps were taken towards the liberalization of the Egyptian gas market, where we issued the new gas law and established an independent gas regulator. This offers an opportunity for the private sector to access the downstream market on competitive basis. Ladies and gentlemen, Egypt can offer a lot to the region's gas future with its strategic location in the middle of resource-rich countries and major energy consumers. Although there are many alternatives to monetize the regional reserves, Egypt seems to be the most feasible one with the least risk. Egypt has access to international maritime trade and available infrastructure like the LNG plants, the Summit pipeline, and reliable distribution networks. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the Egyptian oil and gas sector has embarked on a huge modernization and transformation project to unlock the sector's full value chain potential and turn Egypt into a regional oil and gas hub. Egypt certainly has the potential to create a physical regional trading hub by sharing future natural gas export and transportation infrastructures with neighboring countries, thus contributing to regional energy security. Egypt believes that cooperation between gas-producing, consuming, and transit countries towards the efficient utilization of existing and new infrastructure is a cornerstone in building a sustainable gas market for the region's reserves. Egypt has always had a leading role within the region and believes that well-planned coordination best serves regional interests, and that open dialogue is the only way to build faster and deeper collaboration to face common challenges and resolve any probable conflicts. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, let me conclude by saying that cooperation with the Mediterranean region is at the top of our priorities and will remain so for the years to come. Thank you.
Your Excellency, you can please remain seated here. And I would like to invite the panel, gentlemen, if you can join the podium, please. Mr. Hisham Mekawi from BP, Mr. Karim Badawi from Schlumberger, Your Excellency Saad Safir Najari, and Your Excellency, Mr. Abi Khalil. Maalik, thank you very much for joining us. I will speak in English because it's convenient for a lot of us here. Thank you for joining this session. This is a very important, I would say, peak of this event today. We have had various discussions, including about dear subjects for you in relation to the gas hub and the role of Egypt. We would like you to enlighten us further. When we discuss about gas in the region, the East Med region, and the role of regional countries, and most importantly Egypt, we cannot ignore the implication of gas for the broader world, including for example, Europe's national security in terms of diversification. Although we heard earlier during the sessions today that it's not going to be a walk in the park. In other words, pricing will play a role, competition between different various sources, as well as, if you like, the ability to utilize infrastructures. Egypt presents itself as a safe bet. You have production being in view of development coming from Israel, although they've started producing from Tamar, the field in the north. Leviathan is, I believe, starting in 2019. The recent large discoveries offshore Egypt is changing the picture. We have a significant shift in strategy. Egypt now is reopening its export window for LNG. The question is for how long? And so one of the first questions I would like to ask you before we discuss the main topic is what do you feel are the main challenges and concerns, perhaps, facing the petroleum industry in Egypt today, not only in the upstream. So if you would like to discuss a little bit about the main challenges you think we are facing today in Egypt.
Thank you very much. And perhaps before answering this question directly, I need to get a little bit of some background, like an introduction to what we would like to say regarding the challenge. So when we talk about Egypt's oil and gas profile, we have to say that we are one of the oldest oil producer, not only in the region, but also in the world. When we started in the late 1890s, this is something that shows that it is old industry in Egypt, hence in the Middle East and in the world. And we have really since then grown a lot in this sector. And we have a lot of success stories, and we have a lot of skills within the oil and gas sector. Having said that, we need to know and we need to say that in the early 2000s, we became a net exporter of gas. And as you all know, challenges that we're facing the country as a result of the revolutions that we had in 2011, 2013 has meant simply, as we all know, being in the Middle East and our brothers here, that with political instability like what we faced in 2011, 2013, definitely we had economic instability, security issues. Then there was no investments. When we talk about investments and we talk about international oil companies and many other investors, they immediately started. I wouldn't say that they have left the investment and they pulled out from Egypt, but the least we could say that they've slowed down their investments and they slowed down their long-term commitments. Hence, we have seen this reflected immediately to the production profile of the country. When I said that, I needed to tie up my introduction saying that we were in the mid-2000s a net exporter of gas, and then in the 2012-2013 we became short of gas as a result of what I was saying of instabilities. This meant that the strategy of the country in the mid-2000s with my predecessors and the strategy of how we were looking at the energy priorities, that we quickly built our LNG plants, we quickly had long-term commitments for exports of gas, which turned out that we are short of gas and we are not able to fulfill our commitments, not only breach the long-term export gas contracts, but also not able to satisfy the local market. This means that when we plan and when we put investments and we put our strategies and then together with our investors we commit for long-term big investments like the LNG plants, which are worth each perhaps more than $5 billion, perhaps more in the current evaluation of the capacities. I would say that this means that when you ask me about the challenges, my introduction was meant to tie up with the challenge that I'm thinking of. And when we talk about security of supply, means that I couldn't, as a country alone in Egypt, fulfill a long-term commitment. Hence, regional cooperation will be needed. So when I said that in the mid-2000s we committed with long-term export contracts, we committed with heavy investments in infrastructure for LNG plants, unfortunately for political instability that we had and several reasons, as we know and we have all lived what happened in Egypt, we were not able to fulfill contracts. Then we suffered from international arbitrations. Now we have to settle them, we have to pay the price. This is not only a pressure and an obligation, but it also would affect the reputation and the commitment of a country, which is not good. Therefore, when we talk about challenges, and this is why not only I am honored to be here to talk about the regional gas hub and the regional cooperation in energy, but this is how I'm trying to market the idea. to market the idea. So when you were saying in the introduction that I'm just landed, because yesterday I was in France. I was in Paris for 3 days marketing the regional gas hub. We need the support of everybody. 2 months ago, I was in the United States marketing for the gas hub as well. Why I'm saying that? Because you precisely spotted on the challenge. The challenge is that I cannot, as Egypt, because you asked me, what do you see the challenge for Egypt? I cannot think that I can, as a country, be a gas hub. No, I need the cooperation of the neighboring country. We are together, complementing each other. We are together going to form the regional hub. A regional hub is for reliable supplies of gas, reliable supply of energy, whether it is only gas or electricity. And this means that if this was the case a few years back, and we had this integration among the neighboring countries in the region, with the shortage of supply that we had after long-term commitment, we could have had the gas coming from any of the neighboring country, or were able to, let us say, what we call swaps, if the infrastructure is not there, and we could have had what we would say capitalize on our good ties and our good relations and our good coordination among each other. Therefore, when we talk about the topic that we need to speak about our regional gas hub, we need to market the idea that it is a security of supply first. It is the benefit of every of the countries among the joining parties in this forum, and as much as we can, it is reflected to the welfare and the well-being of the people of the countries. So the challenge, to summarize in one word, is the urgency. We need to urgently and quickly form this regional cooperation and this gas hub, this energy hub for all neighboring countries in the region.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your very candid answer, Your Excellency. Is Europe prepared to engage to support you on the buyer side, or your worry is more on the source, or they are telling you how much gas do you have, and then we can discuss long-term contracts? How is Europe interacting with you on this?
This is an important question, and actually, as you all know, but just only again for the sake of sequential thinking and getting back to the point, just wanted to remind everybody that when they are, as the European Union, interest to diversify and to make sure that they ensure as well their reliable source of supply, they need to make sure that they have continuous, reliable supply. As we know, they have the production of the North Sea declining. They are at the same time getting their supplies from Russia through several pipelines. At the same time, they then complement their needs from LNG imports of cargoes. So they are currently in Europe importing LNG. They are importing gas. So, and this is happening from open market. So when you tell me, are you sure, or is this part of the discussion? No, the discussion is that we are able to reach them by letting them rely and put us, and I'm not only talking about Egypt, but I'm talking about Egypt currently because we have the machine, we have the LNG plant. So the machine that is doing the cargoes. However, the gas itself is currently, yes, from Egypt, but when connected with the pipelines to the other producers in the region, hence we could be then the East Mediterranean cluster that is the source of reliable supply to Europe among several sources of supply. We cannot, for a big continent like Europe, be the sole supplier. However, we could be a reliable supplier for them. Hence, some of the actions that we have taken so far is that we have established through several arrangements and MOUs with the Energy Commission, MOUs that we've been signing and we've signed last year, together with several one-on-one between Egypt and Cyprus, between Egypt private sector and Israeli upstreamers like Noble, to get gas from there. So it is then under the umbrella of government understanding and EU MOUs to support Egypt technically and financially to reach the position where they can really rely on us as a reliable source of supply among several suppliers for gas. Definitely, and what we can see now, that we have gained lot of momentum, a lot of supporters. We've initiated earlier this year in January the first ministerial East Mediterranean Gas Forum hosted in Cairo. The second meeting will be next month, inshallah, in July. And what I can tell you is that we have received already so far several requests and applications for European countries to join this forum, which with candid and sincere and interest to join this forum for making sure that they are giving the support that is needed for the stability of this forum and for the success of this forum. That will, as I say, be one of the reliable and secured sources of gas supplies to Europe.
Thank you. One more question, if I may, is regarding your recent bid rounds. I understand they were very successful. There's a renewed interest in Egypt. It was very competitive, I hear. It's going to be very tough for junior explorers now to be involved in Egypt. It's becoming a big IOC game. But I would like to have your opinion on those bid rounds and how is it going or shaping up?
Well, this is an important question, and actually, because we all know that, and I was talking with His Excellency President Amin al-Jumail a few minutes ago about how Egypt now is performing and how we are doing all our commitments and our projects and our plans with a sense of urgency, and this is what we call New Egypt. Having said that, since 2015, we have been able to achieve major oil and gas projects, among which, as you know, was Zohr. The idea of Zohr was like a game changer, not only for being the biggest so far in the Mediterranean, biggest discovery, but also from the time of discovery till marketing this gas in the grid was a world record, and it is a world record till now. This has attracted the attention of important international oil companies. Plus, the reforms that we are undergoing currently, economic reforms, among which, for me, the most important is the subsidy reform, because our energy was heavily subsidized, but now we are undergoing a serious reform program for energy reforms and fuel reforms. With these two important factors, we've seen how the appetite of international oil companies have been looking to Egypt. The third important element, and perhaps we all understand what I mean, that when we talk about regional cooperation, East Mediterranean gas cooperation, this also gives a third element of confidence for the international oil companies. Why is that? Because when an international major oil company would come to Egypt and have interest in Cyprus and have interest in Libya, have interest in Israel, has interest in Lebanon, then there are for them economies of scale. They have the footprint. They can then leverage this economies of scale and capitalize on that, so that a discovery here and a small discovery here and a medium discovery here together, they can form a weight for them whereby it is a meaningful investment for them to justify. And then this leads me to answering your to the point, your question, saying successful bid rounds. I have to tell you that the latest bid round, we have 3 state corporations. Nevertheless, I would say that Egypt State Corporation is all over the year on the international agenda for bid rounds, so that we keep the international oil companies attracted to what we do, whether it is in the offshore Mediterranean or for the first time on the Red Sea offshore, all Delta, the Nile Delta, or Eastern or Western Desert. However, the latest bid round has seen important observations. First was ExxonMobil. ExxonMobil, for the first time, to come to Egypt in an upstream bid round successfully, and was awarded with an offshore block in the Mediterranean. Then comes a company like Shell, who has been in Egypt for more than 100 years, but eager to participate, and was awarded with 5 blocks. 2 of them was offshore and 3 of them was onshore. Then our strategic, famous known partners, BP and Eni, with another 2 important blocks, offshore and onshore, and then among medium-sized companies, but for the first time to come. So this diverse interest from international oil companies, showing interest, whether it is in offshore or onshore, and whether large-scale companies like ExxonMobil or medium to small-sized companies like new companies coming to Egypt for the first time, shows interest. And lastly, for the first time after having demarcation of the exclusive economic zone between Egypt and Saudi Arabia for the Red Sea, we have launched the first bid round for the Red Sea offshore, and so far we have received an important interest from international oil companies. This shows that there is confidence, there is interest for international oil companies to come and invest. But I am telling you, while I am Egyptian, yes, but I am telling you that they are not coming only for Egypt. They are coming because they want to be in the region. They want to be there, and they know now that we are all working together. They want to capitalize on the economies of scale of their findings, so that they can have a significant footprint where they can really enjoy the important market that we have. We have an important market. It is not always China and India. No, when they see us cooperating together, we are significant for them. But when we were scattered and not aligned, so we were not that attractive. Seeing us aligned, seeing us together in some forums or some coordination or some alignment, they can see us significant, sizable market where we, at the end of the day, the idea is to attract foreign direct investment, have more employment, job business opportunities, create private business opportunities. I mean, it will be reflected on our economies, on the welfare and the well-being of our people and our countries. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. In short, the geology has no borders, unlike politics. I would like to turn a question to maybe representatives of the private sector investing in Egypt, notably Mr. Mekawi from BP. One of the initiatives that has been led by the government and by His Excellency himself recently, in the recent years, is the oil and gas sector reform program. It was designed, or it is designed, to encourage further investment, to probably enhance regulation in the market, maybe with regards to gas, but also to debottleneck the whole flow. Do you believe that it goes far enough from the point of view of BP?
Thanks, Walid. Yeah, I think yes, and I think it's always good to go back to history. Because if you go back tens of years, I think we all knew, and everyone in Egypt knew, we had issues, we had challenges, we had inefficiencies, which is resulting from subsidies, from foreign exchange mechanism or rate, which was not, reflecting the real value. We knew we had bureaucracy and decisions were taking time, and I think we spent years talking about them, and probably not putting our energy in fixing them, but putting our energy how difficult it will be to fix them. So I think the mindset shift we've seen in the last period was, instead of focusing the energy on talking about the problem and avoiding it, is just facing them. And I think if you ask me one word, what is the difference? And I think the difference is one word, it's leadership. And leadership makes decision, leadership takes bold decisions, and doesn't avoid it. I think that's the big difference we've seen in Egypt the last 5 years. And that's made a huge difference. So if you ask us as a major investor in the country, yes, it's absolutely very impressive. Again, dealing with inefficiencies mean value goes back to the country, which means allowing us to invest more. It's a cycle. Investment is a cycle which, again, is enabled by decisions like this. I mentioned in the morning, Your Excellency, in another session, something else. In addition to the macro decisions, I think in our sector, the deregulation of the gas in Egypt, I think it's a very important step, because I mentioned in the morning, Your Excellency, we need the regulator has to be independent, and that's, I think, this decision, this was made a couple of years ago. And it allows us to market our gas domestically freely now to end users with a strong regulator regulating this, but also freeing investors which find more gas to allow us to continue these investments. So I think that's important. The second thing I mentioned in the morning, Your Excellency, was, I said probably in the last 3 years, we, not just BP, I think most of the companies in Egypt, with a strong, confident will from our partners in the government, have renegotiated all of our agreements, because they were old agreements and they were not allowing a win-win big investments. The $35 billion His Excellency mentioned, this was signed in Sharm el-Sheikh in 2014. And I tell you, the difference is the speed, sense of urgency, and sense of confidence. I'll just give you one example. Atoll, which was a very nice discovery, and we have plans to explore more in its north side. From the day we've decided to negotiate a development plan and a new gas price, to the day we signed an MOU in London with His Excellency and our CEO, Bob Dudley, 6 weeks. I haven't seen in my career something done with this sense of urgency. So I think the sense of urgency, to answer your question, absolutely yes. And that's why, it's not just talk. And that's why, as I said in the morning, we decided in 2014 to invest $10 billion, which we did, and we're going to invest more over the next 5 years in Egypt. So I think that's absolutely yes.
Was Nike sponsoring that event in Sharm el-Sheikh? Just do it?
No, it wasn't. It was leadership sponsoring it with strong will.
Thank you. One question on the feasibility of the regional gas hub. How BP is viewing this? You are also a major player in LNG globally. In Egypt, I note that you are now a large owner in the West Nile Delta development. At peak, it will deliver 1.5 BCF per day. to the domestic market. You are very much geared toward the domestic market at this stage, power generation and supporting the market. How is your position and in terms of viewing the future when it comes to the regional cooperation and gas potential re-export out of Egypt from other regional players?
I'm extremely optimistic, and the reason I'm optimistic because it's not driven by politics, it's driven by economics. Again, as His Excellency said, cooperation, integration adds more value than each country working by itself. Egypt as a hub, it makes lots of sense because, geography, one. Two is Nile Delta is a world-class basin. I think there's yet to find more gas in the Nile Delta. We have the infrastructure, not just the LNG plants, as is actually said, but the internal infrastructure in Egypt. Egypt is all connected. So all of this, but I go back to my first point. All of this is there. The only reason, again, back to my confidence why, economic reason and the will. There is a will in leadership in Egypt, and I think there is a growing will in the region because this is we strong believe this is good for the region. So yeah, I think it's not a headline in newspaper now. It's reality, and it will happen. It's happening. It will happen more, and I think that's great. It will create value. It will create opportunities. It will bring new players, and it's good business.
Thank you, Hisham. Your Excellency, one more question, if you allow me. One of the key, I would say, data points that are hard to find even in the latest statistics from IEA or others is the projection for a gas demand in Egypt in the medium and maybe longer term. Where are we today in terms of consumption and how do you see the trend going? If you can answer with very brief statistics, if it's possible.
Well, consumption is affected by two important things. First of all, it is price sensitive. So if we talk about domestic consumption in general, is really price sensitive. And but at the same time, it is also reflecting two things. Efficiency, so how efficient which is the energy efficiency. How do you consume the energy? Number two, in this side, is what is the rate of the development. So you can be efficient, you can be price sensitive, yes, but at the end of the day, there is growth. So industry growth, let us say. And this is more important. How do I see what's happening? Because I can tell you it was a big cycle from where we started till where we are now. It took us like 8 years. When we started to see our production profile coming down, and now we see it getting up again, reaching the sufficiency, and then exporting. Hence, all the prediction of consumption were really distracted. And at the time when we said there was no consumption, unfortunately there was no consumption because there was no supply. And we saw a lot of factories that are not operating because they had not received the gas and they are closing down. And when you look at the supply demand, you see, oh, well, there is no demand. No, there was no demand because the factories are closed down. At the same time, when we saw the other important energy consumer or gas consumer is power, electricity. It was like increasing crazily, but unfortunately this was not also true because this was inefficient power plants that we had. These were open cycle, not up to date machines or turbines, let us say. What happened recently, when we got the Siemens power plants, we've seen efficiency that we have not seen, not only in Egypt, but when we talk about it internationally, it's a world-class record. When we talk about an efficiency of 63% power plants, So what happened is that what we have anticipated and planned for gas consumption regarding power, we have provided more, but what was consumed was less. Instead, in spite of that, consumption was higher. I mean, but the consumption of gas was less, and the power generated was more. So here, I want to tell you at the end of the day that we are confident that with what we are talking about, with the economic reform, with the new investment attraction that we are trying to get, with the new development that we are having in Egypt, with the efficiency program that we are undergoing as well, we are very much aware of energy efficiency. We have dedicated programs and dedicated departments for energy efficiency as well. So I would say that we have, for the coming 10 years, full decade, we have no fears that our supplies will meet the demand. What we are thinking about loudly and together, and I've said it everywhere, that we, as oil and gas here in the panel, experts, we would be perhaps affected by the increase of the renewable energy. And this means that with the increase of the development and the efficiency of the renewables now, this means that we will be left with more fossil fuel, whether it is oil and gas, which means that we need to think quickly on how to quickly develop what we have in hands now, oil fields or gas fields, because we are afraid that one day we will, this oil and gas will be there like what we see in coal now. Number two, we need to capitalize on what we have from oil and gas with having added value projects. When we talk about petrochemicals and other more adding value to the economy. So supply demand is fine so far, at least with what we have in our hands now of amount of reserves and discoveries. As I say, we have to, on the contrary, accelerate the development rates in the region.
Thank you. Perhaps the effort to incentivize renewable energy and other sources will alleviate some of the pressure on gas in the future too, and I'm sure you're working on it. I would like to ask now a more of a bilateral relationship or further demonstration of cooperation between the different countries, and we are concerned here in Lebanon. My question is to His Excellency Mr. Abi Khalil, former Minister of Energy. I know that you have worked together to discuss, as per your earlier contribution to the session, the revival of the Arab gas pipeline. What is the status today, and how likely it is that we could, given the scope of developing the regional gas hub, how likely is it that this pipeline could still be reactivated and allow Lebanon to receive Egyptian gas?
Well, actually, that subject was still being discussed until the last hours of the previous government between me and His Excellency. Actually, we have a gas supply contract with Egypt that was signed back in 2009 during the tenure of His Excellency Prime Minister Sinno, and it was ratified by the Lebanese Parliament in 2011. As I said earlier in a previous panel, we got supplied half of the quantity for an 11 months, a period of 11 months. Then the events in the Sinai, the declining production, lots of events contributed to the halt of the supply from Egypt. Now the Arab gas pipeline is there. It needs a pumping station on the Jordanian-Syrian border because the pressure is too low to get here to Lebanon, but this is not the major problem. The major problem is the geopolitics of the region. This pipeline crosses many geographies, many countries. You know the events in Syria and the situation in Syria, and this has been preventing us from going further with this gas supply. Hopefully, the situation will get back to normal in the region. I think this is a very important and strategic pipeline that allows us either to import gas from Egypt till we have our indigenous gas, or afterwards to pump back gas to Egypt to use the Egyptian liquefaction plants, and that's what we had spoken about in our last meeting. So I think this pipeline is a strategic pipeline. Of course, Egypt is one of the larger countries of this region with a mature sector, oil and gas sector. As His Excellency said, they drilled their first well in the 1890s. So this is 130 years ago. So Egypt has an infrastructure, as I said, they enjoy an existing infrastructure, multi-billion-dollar infrastructure that is there. So Egypt has all the advantages to play that role. Egypt is also a brotherly country. To us, we enjoy good relations, so we are open to bilateral cooperation. We've always been open, and this is one of the basics of Lebanese politics all over the eras, as I would say. But nevertheless, however, the presence of Israel in a gas forum will prevent us from getting organized, if you want, under this framework. Hence, I would think the future of the relations would be bilateral relations between Lebanon and Egypt outside of this organization that is being prepared or that is being led by Egypt. Hopefully, the situation in the region, especially in Syria, will get back to normal, so that we will take advantage of the existing infrastructure that is the Arab gas pipeline.
Thank you. I think it is indeed a very, very important asset, and I understand it's still under pressure and not much maintenance except pumping investment required. A question to you, Mr. Ambassador, talking about the bilateral relationships. One of the topics that we covered earlier is human capital and Egypt's expertise, given all these years in managing bid rounds and others. How is Egypt, and how are you involved in maybe facilitating exchanges between, I would say, the burgeoning of a Lebanese petroleum sector and the very well mature Egyptian petroleum sector? On the people side, as well, universities, academics, or companies, as well as government institutions and government cooperation.
Thank you for the question. I think that it's not only a bilateral thing. What is common between Egypt and Lebanon is that they are both Arab countries. And, you know, Europe coming out of the war, out of World War II in the 50s, developed their economies and actually their political entity by cooperating first in 1957 on coal and steel. And I guess that gas in the region can be the coal and steel for the Arab world and for the region at large. So the eventual cooperation bilateral cooperation between Egypt and Lebanon comes within this context of cooperation within the Arab world and hopefully also within the whole region and the Eastern Mediterranean. To answer more specifically your question about Egypt and Lebanon, it is important, as Mr. McCawie said, to build on the economic merits of gas in the region. But at the same time, politics and economics are intertwined, and it's very difficult sometimes to split them. And as an example, Lebanon is finding difficulty exploring its gas reserves and resources because of conflict with Israel, and that the border question is not solved, and therefore the companies are, hesitating a little to explore gas on both sides, and therefore resolving conflicts in a fair manner, of course, is a crucial thing to developing the economies of the region. And I guess that gas is going to be at the center of all this. And again, the conflict in Syria is putting a lot of making a lot of complications in the way of this cooperation between Egypt and Lebanon, and the pipeline goes to Syria, and that poses a lot of challenges to this cooperation. But there are, I guess, that cooperation between Egypt and Lebanon, Egypt and Jordan, and hopefully one day Syria, after the conflict is politically resolved, is an objective in itself. This cooperation between the Arab countries is an objective. So therefore, even if the pipeline is not available in the immediate future, I guess it is very important to consider other ways of pushing forward this cooperation. And tomorrow, His Excellency Minister Mullah is meeting with his Lebanese counterpart, Mr. Bustani, and there are ideas on how to cooperate until this pipeline is available for export. Namely, there are ideas about compressed gas exports from Egypt, and that can be done through trucks, Mediterranean. And so we are looking into different options. The exploration of gas fields. I know that you have the blocks in the north that are available. There are different companies and experiences, I guess, in Egypt that can help in the process, different services, etc., so as to tie Egypt and Lebanon in that field with the other Arab countries, and so that this could be within the context of the Eastern Mediterranean a good base for even to serve the political purposes of the Arab world through enforcing the cooperation in the economic field, focusing on gas.
Thank you. I'll turn back again to Egypt, and my question here is to Karim. You represent Schlumberger, one of the major oilfield service providers. Is the activity that is going to ramp up offshore will ramp up costs as well, or are you introducing new technologies that will allow deep water development and maintain the recent rationalization of cost in the service industry?
Thank you for the question. So when you look at the environment in Egypt, I'm happy to say that Schlumberger is the biggest oilfield services company, and two of its biggest values is people and technology. A big part of investing in people and technology is driving more efficiencies. And when you look at the operations, offshore in the Mediterranean, we need to keep a very high, standard on safety and very high standard on the efficiency front. And I have come back to Egypt a year ago, and I have seen an incredible amount of excitement actually in the oil and gas sector. And this excitement is really about the mindset that we all work as one team, and that you have a lot of partnership between the different stakeholders, whether our clients, the ministries, and all the different bodies in Egypt, to look at how we can accelerate from the discovery to time to first gas, how we can accelerate efficient unlocking of the full potential of the resources in Egypt. So definitely the future of the activity in the Mediterranean is growing. Schlumberger is very, very proud of all the collaboration taking in the sector. And one of the key drivers is technology, but it's also hosted around a framework. And if you allow me, I want to really kind of talk about the modernization program, right, which is really, has been led by His Excellency Engineer Tarek El-Mullah, which is an incredible driving force for all the different stakeholders within the industry to really have a common goal of how we can really address the various pillars, which all of them lead to actually lower, in terms of costs, higher efficiency, better quality, more technology, and so on and so forth. And if you look in terms on the modernization program, and maybe to link back to your earlier question, one of the key pillars is really related to people. And we are extremely proud, actually, of the collaboration, within the sector about the capacity building effort and drive that His Excellency has been doing actually in Egypt. Schlumberger is one of the international companies who are participating in working together collaboratively to really increase the competency and really have a very big, strong pool of future talent leaders, right, in the oil and gas sector in Egypt. And we have undergone specific programs. One of them is actually with the universities in terms of bridging the gap between academia and between the actual practical needs of the students to see with the sector and to come to the base, look at the different technologies, latest technologies, processes, and get inducted so that when they graduate, they can become quicker, more proactive members of the oil and gas sector in Egypt. Another very, very important program has been actually the middle management program, that has been really led by His Excellency in terms of looking at the fast-track program of future managers in the oil and gas sector, and again of how to work collaboratively in the spirit with the oil and the international oil companies. And I'm talking from Schlumberger perspective, but as a representative really of also the other service companies, the other operators, international operators in Egypt, who are all working together to provide that, that experience and the international experience about, the processes and, the leadership and about the innovation and so forth. So I think this collaboration under the modernization program has been an amazing, really, journey. And I cannot go without also talking about the digitalization, because really, again, one of the big drivers that, His Excellency has been really driving, all of us as an organization to contribute towards is, and this goes back to efficiency and in terms on lowering the costs and making sure we get maximize the value of the assets of Egypt, which again are all, for a return for the investment of the Egyptian people, is a digitalization of the sector. And on this digitalization of the sector, this encompasses, in terms of monitoring, the production, from well by well from different fields, how you can see where you need to improve or address specific issues in certain fields and so forth, but also the digitalization of all the subsurface. I think there's one really game changer project that His Excellency has been, has launched, which is the Egypt Upstream Gateway, which is really to digitalize the whole subsurface of Egypt and provide an investment attraction forum for foreign investors to really have access to the data, have access to really where they can invest, have access in terms of where the assets with most returns and so on and so forth. And this will be really a game changer within the industry. So I know it is a very, very exciting time in Egypt, and I would like to maybe just even really recollect my first meeting with His Excellency, and actually also Hisham also was also there when we were looking at the multi-client for the Gulf of Suez. We dealt with it, as a team, and His Excellency kept on repeating the word mindset. We need to have a very, very strong mindset for acceleration, for delivering, and for making sure that we really unlock the full potential of the Gulf of Suez, right, for the future generations to come. And as international really companies, it's really a fantastic time in the oil and gas sector in Egypt.
Thank you very much. I would like to pass it on to Muna. She has a couple of questions, mostly on the downstream, which are important to ask. Please, Muna, go ahead.
Thanks, Walid, for tackling the issues of upstream of oil and gas during the first part of the session, as well as the bilateral relation. Question now to my friend, Mr. Mikawi, concerning, we know very well that the PP is very and heavily involved in the upstream segment of the oil and gas in Egypt. But what is your projects in the downstream? Do you have existing projects in downstreams? Do you have any forecasted project in pipelines? I have searched a lot about it, me and my friend Walid, but we haven't found actually significant data about it. So we are curious to know about your activities.
Sure. So the upstream will continue to be the focal point for sure, but I think the last 2 years, because of the change, we've seen change demand. I've seen personally change demand from our downstream colleagues, and it's all driven by the reform which happened in the country. Again, we go back to the point we started with, because with the reform, with lifting subsidies, with cutting red tape, with decisions making quicker, I think for the first time, we, and His Excellency knows this, our downstream team now wants to start. We're meeting with the downstream team in the ministry, EGPC, in the next few weeks, because we have some interesting opportunities they would like to explore. Few months ago, His Excellency attended and we had him as an honorary in launching Castrol in Egypt, which is, many people don't know, Castrol is 100% loop owned by BP. It's the strongest, one of the strongest, if not the strongest brand in Europe and elsewhere, and we have formed a joint venture, and their plan, they have extremely aggressive plans to expand across Egypt with a local partner, TAQA. On the renewables, BP have bought 43% of a company called Lightsource. It's the largest, fastest growing solar developer in Europe. They've identified 10 countries across the globe as core countries for the future. Egypt is one of them. I think, again, we have a local partner, the Allam Group, but I meet regularly with the CEO and main owner of this company, Nick, and he tells me the opportunities in solar in Egypt is beyond anyone's imagination. They are now probably finalizing, very close to finalizing a few deals, which again, just a start. So lots, and of course we have in the midstream today, you asked me what you have today, we have an NGL plant, UGDC, we have NGVC, which is a car gas company, which again, I think with the reforms happening, we've seen this company probably over the last 10 years slowing down. I think it is the time now this company will start growing for the benefit of, again, it's good because it will be now good business and also it's good for the environment. So yeah, there's lots on the, and then the other thing, so I forgot, we are working with His Excellency's teams now with our trading arm about optimization of products, refinery optimization, bunkering. I think all fits in the regional hub thing, but again, it's lots of opportunities, which I think over the next months will mature in a way that adds value for the country and definitely add value for investors like us.
Thank you so much, Hisham, for this good news that we haven't found in our research. So you are providing us today with some good and new news. My question now to His Excellency, As we know in Egypt that export is one of our national priority, ultimate priority. And of course, the petrochemicals sectors are very important and used to be very important component in our export structure. I want to know Your Excellency's opinion about refining industries in Egypt, petrochemicals industry in Egypt, the demand in the market, the appetite from the foreign direct investors about investing in Egypt in this field, whether the petrochemicals will continue to be one of our export main pillar in the overall national export volume.
Thank you, Mona, for the question. Actually, yes, part of the diversification that we are currently doing and we are focusing on as part of our vision is, as I was mentioning perhaps a little bit earlier, than now when we are trying to accelerate our development for the gas field and the gas founds, what we need to do is the added value. Added value projects in this case would not only be to have part of the security of supplies and hence stopping importation, but also to localize the industry and to have what we import fabricated in Egypt. We know that petrochemical is a magic word now, and this is how we can see all simple refineries are shifting towards petrochemical industry, and we can see mega complex now being built in the Gulf countries and not only in the Gulf countries, but also together with Kuwaitis or Emiratis or Saudi major state-owned companies, which is Aramco or ADNOC or KPC, also built as joint ventures in Asia. And this is why, because they now are thinking with this new strategy of having the added value products, not only selling the crude, but selling the end product to the large markets, which is in Asia, namely as a primarily market for our brothers, the Gulf producers. Nevertheless, when you look at Egypt in this domain, since we are importing a big quantity of petrochemical products, and we have still a big gap, what we can tell that over the last couple of years, we were able to open and to inaugurate one of the most important factories or industry mega project that we had, which is a polyethylene big factory that is producing about 600,000 tons, which is not sufficient, but adding to what we have already previously in another company, about 400. So we are having like a 1 million ton of polyethylene, which is not sufficient to the market. So what we are having as future projects currently, expansion of the two plants that we have, expansion of adding more units to produce more polyethylene and polypropylene, together with undergoing now other projects with important foreign direct investments that we are marketing currently. We have made some good feasibility studies. We've identified the configuration and the production, the product quantities and the product range of different products that will be needed, because as technology advances, we see fourth and fifth generation of petrochemical happening and developed now. So not only in where we are focusing currently, where we find our rich gas, from which we extract what is needed as feed gas for the petrochemical industry. So we are looking for other locations as well in Alamein, which is going together with the development and the plan of expanding this new city of Alamein, but also in the Suez Economic Zone. We are also having important project under now final closure, financial closure. I want to tell you from this that we have received many international investors wanting to join this important two projects. Meanwhile, we have also received a lot of interest from off-takers as well as major financial investors. So the future, as I say, for Egypt is now shifting towards such important industry. But at the same time, we did not forget one important thing, which is how we should and we are upgrading now our current refineries in order to satisfy the local market with the refined products. And here we are talking about gasoline and diesel and jet fuel, which we are currently importing about 35% of the country's needs. So in the year 22, 23 maximum, we will complete all these projects, important hydrocracker projects that we are undergoing, and upgrade and expansion of refineries, by which, as I say, by year 22 maximum or 23, we will have self-sufficiency of refined products, and we will be talking about the needs, as I say, to focus more on expanding our refining, our petrochemicals industry. So when we talk about exports, so part of our export today is petrochemical. This is true, but part of it is because we need to have some of the quantities that we export to pay back some of the debt of the project itself. So it is tied up with repayment of the financial borrowing of the projects. However, you can see it as Ministry of Trade in your balance of trade. But another good thing is that with the proximity of the location of Egypt in the Mediterranean, we are better located to sell to Europe our end products. So we are focusing on that, and we are having good plans according to our strategy to expand our petrochemicals industry.
Thanks, Your Excellency. Another question concerning the renewable energy. We have a very ambitious plan concerning renewable energy sources. Of course, the more we rely on the renewable energy sources, the more we can export gas. We used to have very high hopes on numbers concerning the contribution of the renewable energy sources. So maybe sometimes we didn't meet our high expectation, maybe 5-6 years ago or 8 years ago. So I want to know your expectation concerning the contribution of this important sector, the renewable energy, in our overall national energy sources.
Okay, this is a very important question, because when we develop our energy strategy, together with my colleague, His Excellency Minister of Electricity and Renewable, we sit together and we developed the strategy for the year 2035. And this strategy is an important energy mix that would include all kind of sources of energy, among which, of course, is renewable. And when we talk about renewable, we namely talk mostly with solar, wind, and then we have also some nuclear, as you know, and hydro. But nevertheless, important part for me is when we have developed this in 2016, we did not have Zohr completed. We did not have this excellent production of gas profile, and also my colleague did not have or haven't had operated yet the Siemens power plants. So what happened is that when we developed this strategy in 2016, our aim was to reach the year 2035 with an energy mix of 42% of our energy mix would be produced by renewables. What we are talking together now is to revisit this plan and this strategy because, as I say, we had successful gas production and they had successful and efficient power generation from Siemens. So what happens is that we would anticipate to reach this 42% rather earlier than the year 2035. We are talking perhaps in the year 2030. And we are currently together preparing for a new round of revisiting this energy strategy that includes, as I say, important energy mix, which is important for a country like Egypt with this big population, with this big GDP growth that needs to be diversified and reliable and secured energy profile and energy mix for the future. So we are not just selling numbers or having high hopes, because this is true when you talk about history, but now what we promise we deliver, but not only deliver, we exceed what we promise. Thank you, Mona.
Thank you, Excellency. But I want to seize your presence today here with us in Lebanon for more questions, if you allow me.
I don't want to bore the guests here, but I'm ready for questions. I'm coming from Egypt for answering your questions anyway.
Yeah, my last question, Your Excellency. Egypt has taken a very tough, strategic, and important decision concerning subsidy reform program. It has a great impact or a significant impact on the consumption level and on the industrial level. So we want to hear your assessment about the impact of this reform program on the overall macro indicators of the economy.
As we know, energy in general is the main engine to drive the economy. So when we talk about reform of energy is very sensitive and very important, and it will reflect then the success. Whether we were successful in the energy reforms or not, it will be reflected immediately on the economy's growth and specifically when you talk about industry. So first part of this is how we did address the fuel and electricity, which is in general our energy subsidy reform. We used to have cheap fuels, and this was immediately reflected on consumption. Consumption was increasing on a year-to-year basis crazily and was not justified, except that people would say, oh, well, because we are a growing population, but this was not true. It is not a matter of growing population, no, it is a matter that we are abusing the resource that we have because we are actually selling cheap fuels. And this was not good for the economy. It was not good even for the behavior, the consumption and the consumer behavior. Easy come, easy go. So starting to fix the prices, and with slowly and gradually over 5 years now, we have been able to increase constantly our fuel prices, which are up till now still subsidized. So what we have reached, at least for fuels, when we talk about gasoline and diesel, a recovery of the cost. So the selling price are getting up to 85% of we are recovering like 85% of the cost of the product, which is not that good, but we are aiming to close this gap in the coming year or two maximum. And what is helping us two things now. Brent prices is still in the range of, would say these days 65, 64, 62, whatever, but we can go up to 70, which can cover our budget. But nevertheless, the second point is that we've seen important consumption rationalization. I will not say that this consumption rationalization has led to decrease in consumption, because it is a growing population, it's a growing market, but we used to see a year-on-year increase in consumption that reached 8%, and this is crazy. When you say 15 million tons of diesel consumption each year, increasing by 7 to 8% each year, this is a big number. Now this is increasing only by 2%, which is excellent, extremely good number. Gasoline, we used to consume 7.5 million tons per year, and we used to increase by 6%. Now it is increasing by 1 to 2%, which is extremely good. This shows that there is big reduction in the consumption, which is helping us. Number two, with the mechanism that we are undergoing, steadily increasing prices, same as what electricity is doing. We have announced already that we have a formula, which is the fuel indexation, and this will be implemented. So now we will not take the burden of just surprising the people. No, we transparently have announced a formula for the high grade of gasoline. In July, we will start also announcing the formula of all the other products, diesel and other grades of gasoline. Then in September, we will be using this formula on a quarterly basis. It is, of course, linked to Brent. It is linked to exchange rate. It has got also our fixed costs, marketing fees, transportation, whatever, is part of this formula. So this fuel indexation is very important, because this will give us then the transparency, and will give the people the tool to get the learning process of educating them slowly on the behavior of the sensitivity on how they would behave while consuming gasoline. The other good thing that we all in Egypt know, that now we see it. This was something that we were laughing when we initiated these ideas 4 or 5 years ago, but we see it now, what we call it the carpooling. Well, what happens that now they are going now into Uber buses or swing or swivel, حاجة اسمها كده اسمها ايه؟ Swivel, and these are kind of good transportation means where we all go together in one way in a vehicle, rather than having each one of us taking his car. This understanding of consumer habit was not there in Egypt. It was like a shame, and people would be shy to go in a public, not a public, let's say semi-public way of transportation to commute from their work to home. Now they see it practical. Not only that, because they also take advantage of doing some work, reading or making some phone calls while they are not having to drive every day. So it has helped also to rationalize the consumption. But at the end of the day, it's consumer behavior, it's the mindset, it's the behavior that we need to see in the Egyptian people. Having said that, we continue on being more transparent in publishing and in announcing why we do that and how we do it, and what is then the savings. When we talk about only rationalizing and reducing subsidies, we continue the story. We tell them that you can see that we are getting this money and putting it into social safety nets. We are putting it into health and medical care, and we are putting it into education. And this is what is most needed in Egypt. And when you sell this story and you educate people and you talk to them and explain what we are doing, and that so we are not getting this money to put it somewhere else. No, it is back to the people and for the welfare of the people, for the health and education, and for underground metro, let us say, public transportation, better ways of funding the mass of the people, like in trains, things that would benefit the majority of the people, would benefit out of this money, rather than only the people who have got 2 or 3 cars would benefit from subsidizing fuel, while the people who do not have any vehicles did not get any benefit from subsidizing fuel. So that's the same thing for electricity, and you see now everybody is talking about how the electricity bill now is becoming expensive, but this is good because we have seen also a good performance in energy or electricity consumption in general, because people now are aware and everybody now is getting this good behavior in educating their people at home. And anyway, it is a success story, not only what I'm saying, but by the IMF and the World Bank, what we have done in subsidy reform is something that would say, and most importantly, and this is the last point, is the leadership. So our president has taken this important reform at heart, and he's taking it against his popularity, while he's committed and he's sure that he is doing this for the best of the people. So therefore, he's talking and he's explaining himself every time to the people what we are doing and why we are doing this. So if there is leadership and sponsorship for this, I think that we are all aligned and committed for the best. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. It's an amazing insight on Egypt. Thank you, Muna, for carrying on. I think the reason leadership is successful is because you're also investing. There is significant investing going into the industry. We have maybe 1 or 2 minutes for questions. I would like to offer it to the broader audience, if you allow me, just for questions, please. Robert.
Your Excellency, good afternoon again. What is the future of the economical free zones in Egypt, and what's the role of oil and gas on those zones, and what's happening there? Are they really taking off? Are they being successful? Are foreign investors coming in?
Well, so far, this is an important question, though it is not part of my file. However, I can tell you in general that I don't think that they have been successful as we wanted so far. And this is what really we are trying as a government to look why we have not reached the success that we wanted, and what are the weak points. What you are telling me is important regarding what is the role of oil and gas in this, and I don't know whether you mean it using oil and gas in the economic zone, or you are talking about pricing. So
no, using industrialization as zones for industrialization of oil and gas.
Yes,
downstream.
Exactly. This is what I'm talking about. Yeah, this is important, and perhaps in the last 2-3 years this was not seen enough, and now I think that we started to see that this is needed, and the government now is working on fixing the weak points and the complaints that we have received. In spite of marketing this economic zone widely, but it has not attracted sufficiently what we expected from the foreign direct investment. Therefore, what's happening is that we are reviewing and we are revisiting this, and I can promise you that soon you will be hearing of some good improvement incentive packages in order to tell you the truth. I think that it is not a matter of they ought to be more successful. Yes. By sense, I mean by logic. But so this means that there is a fundamental problem, and I know, and we know that, and that's why we are diligently and sincerely working on fixing that. It is an effort of the government in entire. I cannot blame a ministry, but it is a government effort to fix this. But again, as part of what we all spoke about, and I'm sorry to say that it is a mindset change. So there are some things that we have to rewind in order to redo correctly in this specific topic, which I agree that we need to refix, and we are now fixing some minds anyway. Thank you.
Since we have agreed that Egypt is a leader in the field, in this field, energy. I mean, these economically free zones are if they're successful, inshallah they will be successful, is a very important for the region, because it's not only on Egypt. It's a model that could apply as well to Lebanon. So, Your Excellency, Mr. Abi Khalil, do we have in Lebanon as well the intention to have economically free zones to encourage downstream industry, oil and gas industries in economically free zones in Lebanon?
Well, actually, I think there are two parts to your question. Actually, we have the Tripoli Free Economic Zone. We passed a month ago at the joint committees of the parliament two laws, one for an industrial zone, one for a free zone in Batroun, and another one in Tyre. So this is a culture that we had, and this is a culture that we're fostering, and this is, I think this is a very this would be very useful. This would be very useful to enhance and push forward to support some of the sectors, especially that those free zones have described. The law describes the kind of activities that would be allowed in those free zones, and it is not a free zone when you can conduct any activity and it would be exempted from all taxes. So it is a form to incentivize some of the sectors that would be to be conducted, some activities to be conducted in those free zones. As for the downstream, as I heard downstream in your last words. Well, the downstream here in Lebanon, as I said in the first panel, Lebanon is an importer of energy. So far, Lebanon has two obsolete refineries. They're not functional since one of them since 81, the other one since 84. I think they have been out of service since then. One was built in 1936, the other one in the 50s. So since then, we've been relying on importing refined product. Our bill can go up to $8 billion when the oil prices are high, and sometimes, and some years we have paid $6 billion per year. We had projects to allow the CNG cars, the compressed natural gas cars. They didn't pass at the Lebanese parliament at the time. Now the how would I say, the introduction of the hybrid and the electrical cars are being incentivized. So in the budget law of 2018, we exempted the electrical vehicles from customs, we exempted the hybrid cars from 80% of the customs. And me, as when I was Minister of Energy, I used to drive a hybrid car to give the example.
And now?
That was before the exemption.
And now what are you driving?
Yes?
What are you driving now?
No,
what car?
I'm driving my regular car. No, I came here with my regular car.
Okay.
So this is to say that maybe the CNG cars, and I've heard about the CNG cars, we lost the window to introduce the CNG cars here in Lebanon, but we did not lose the window to introduce the electrical vehicles and the hybrid vehicles, which would lower our energy bill tremendously in the coming few years.
Thank you very much, Your Excellencies. Wonderful insight on Egypt, also on Lebanon. Thank you very much, everyone. I would like to pass it on to President Ismail to conclude the forum today. Please.
ما رح أعمل خطاب، بعرف إنه تعبتوا أشغال شاقة من الساعة 9 الصبح لحد هلا، بس كلمة شكر لمعالي الوزير على تشريفه. حقيقة نحن يعني منو شيء جديد، علاقة خاصة وتاريخية مع مصر. أول بلد عربي استضاف اللبنانيين بالقرن ال19 وامتزجوا بالشعب المصري ولعبوا دور مهم. بيعرف شريكنا بالأهرام كيف تأسست الأهرام من آل تقلة، اجوا من لبنان، ورئيس تحرير أنطون جميل بالأربعينات. ففي علاقة تاريخية مع مصر. فنحن إذا مع الوزير هو بيته، نحن مع أهلنا. كذلك الأمر نحن متابعين النقلة النوعية اللي حققها الرئيس السيسي في مصر، نحن فخورين فيها. عم نشعر على صعيد الاقتصادي، على صعيد المائي، ولا سيما على صعيد الحوكمي الجوفرنس. وحققت مصر نقلة نوعية بالعالم العربي. وعم بحكي عن معرفة وعن ممارسة، لأنه عندنا معطيات واضحة حول النقلة النوعية على صعيد الحوكمة. نتأمل أنه هالنقلة النوعية اللي حققتها مصر كمان توصل لكل العالم العربي لجهة الحوكمة الرشيدة، لجهة الشفافية والأكاونتابيليتي والمحاسبة. فكذلك الأمر على صعيد العلاقة مع مصر، بعتقد أنه علاقة لبنان ومصر هي علاقة استراتيجية قديمة ومميزة على الصعيد العربي وعلى الصعيد العالمي. فشكرا مع الوزير، أنت مع أهلك وبيتك هون، ونحن بنوعدك أن نستمر بالتعاون إن شاء الله مع بيت مستقبل شراكة مع مؤسسة الأهرام للدراسات الاستراتيجية، نطور العلاقة ويكون المؤتمر مدخل كذلك أمر لمزيد من التنسيق بين بيت المستقبل ومؤسسة الأهرام للدراسات الاستراتيجية. بدي أشكر كل الأحباء اللي شاركونا مع الوزير، دولة الرئيس، الشيخة، يعني كل اللي شاركونا اليوم بهالمؤتمر. يعني كان كما ذكرت من الساعة 9 الصبح مع الوزير، من 9 الصبح بدأنا بهالورشة العمل اليوم. ختاما بقول أنه كانت الأبحاث شيقة على صعيد الطاقة، المياه، الغاز والبترول والطاقات المتجددة كذلك الأمر. كل نحن رح نستخلص العبر من كل الأبحاث. نتأمل أنه خلاصة اجتماعنا اليوم طلع منه كثير أفكار شيقة جديرة بالاهتمام. إن شاء الله بالتعاون مع بعضنا البعض نقدر نستخلص هالأعمال هذه ونوصل لنقترح نحن كبيت مستقبل مع شركائنا، نتوصل إلى تصور نقدر نعرضه على الصعيد اللبناني وعلى الصعيد العربي حتى يكون عم نقوم دورنا. لأنه هدفنا بالنهاية هو الإنسان العربي هو هدفنا، وكل همنا إسعاد الإنسان العربي، تطوير الإنسان العربي، تطوير التنمية في العالم العربي، وننشر الروح اللي رئيس السيسي عم ينشرها اليوم، هي الحوكمة الرشيدة والشفافية. فإن شاء الله نشكركم مجددا لكل اللي شاركوا، اللي كان عندهم كلمة، أو المودريتورز اللي كمان كان عندهم كمان مهمة شاقة. نحن بنشكركم من الصميم، وإن شاء الله إلى اللقاء. شكرا.